welcome into the Fantasy Guides podcast. My name is Andrew Teuscher, and I am joined today by a myriad of characters, including the owner, operator of FantasyGuides.com, Fantasy Guides on Instagram. Honestly, he doesn't run the Fantasy Guides on Twitter, so I can't give him that one. But he runs Fantasy Guides as we know it. Stephen Rippey is here with us. We got contributor and I think runner of the former X-Twitter page, Jacob Rhodes, with us. And, of course, the heart of the show, Jesse Preston, is back with us as well. Gentlemen, how are we feeling so far?
Week away, Andrew. Week from tomorrow. I'm excited.
Jacob, give me your best yippee.
Yippee.
Yeah!
That's Jacob yippee. Yeah.
You know that's as excited as he gets. Jesse, how excited are you?
I'm pumped, man. This is our time of year. Very excited to see what happens.
Even if Steven's going to be watching at Disneyland and not actually getting to see it, we're going to eat up this draft. It's going to be incredible. And consume our content. We're ready to give you guys all the advice and help you guys out. So listen on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube. Follow the Instagram page. Get our content. Get our draft guide, our rookie guide that Steven's pushing out right now. Steven, I didn't have it on the show sheet, but I figure a good enough time as any to mention the little rookie cheat sheet giveaway.
Yeah, it's just a free cheat sheet. You can see it on our webpage. It's not all of our rankings. We have 80 rookies ranked in our dynasty rankings, but this will give you 3 rounds worth to kind of give you a taste of what we'll have with the rookies and kind of help you with your drafts. So yeah, go to our website, fantasyguides.com. Right on the homepage, you'll see where you can download it. You have to give us your email address because it's a emailed PDF file that gets sent to you as soon as you sign up. So yeah, just do that and we'll send it over.
I'll only send an occasional random email your way. Don't worry. It won't be, it's harmless. Speaking of which, also guides, go on to Underdog, get yourself active in the fantasy space always. Jacob's in there sending basketball bets I've just learned about in our betting Discord. Lots of good content. Go on Underdog, use that information. Underdog will match your deposit up to $100 when you use promo code GUIDES, GUIDES, GUIDES. Get in there, use that stuff. And today, gentlemen, we're going to be talking about some rookie player comparisons, some comps to how we view these guys as prospects coming in, some comps to, well, would I trade Caleb Williams for X, Y, or Z, or for this player? We're going to get into all of that today. But before we get there, let's start with some news because we had some news more relevant than others, some of it finally rolling in, one of which I don't know if it's big news or not, but J.K. Dobbins just found himself signing a 1-year deal with the L.A. Chargers shortly before this podcast got rolling. We have Greg Roman, Gus Edwards, and J.K. Dobbins united. The three amigos are back at it. Steven, I'll start with you. J.K. Dobbins to the moon?
Not to the moon. Maybe do they still have the was it the space station? Is that thing still hovering the Earth? The International Space, yeah. The ISS or whatever. Yeah. Maybe to the ISSS, International Space ISS. Yeah, maybe that far. He's got to worry about the injury. You know, like he's just never been healthy, and now he's 25. It feels like he's been injured every season of his young career and barely played. So. I like the system. I like going to a John Harbaugh system, but or a Jim Harbaugh system, I guess. But yeah, no, it's a good landing spot, but I don't know. I still think they could draft a running back as well.
Jacob, are you excited to see the dynamic duo of Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins post Achilles in LA?
Yeah, we've never seen that duo before, so it'll be really interesting to see how it works out. Different team with a coach with the same last name and the same offensive coordinator. Who knows? What could possibly go wrong? They'll probably still draft a running back too. So,
absolutely, we can't have nice things. That's
Gus Edwards is still vulture, so yeah. It's all the same.
Yeah, we'll be tortured. That's what it's all about. So the J.K. Dobbins signing, obviously, I think if they end up taking a running back in the draft, the J.K. Dobbins stuff is kind of on the back burner. Like maybe later in the season, he gets some work, whatever. If they don't draft the running back now I'm starting to pay attention and I'll overreact far more. We'll get through the draft. We'll see where we land. Speaking of guys who were drafted highly, Kyle Pitts in Atlanta has got a little bit of hype. Of course, this is news. I am personally very invested in one of my most important dynasty leagues in Kyle Pitts, namesake and everything. Needless to say, that's not working out. But Raheem Morris, Falcons head coach, has got on and talked about Kyle Pitts and said, quote, he'll be a focal point of the Falcons offense. He'll definitely be used. Honestly, I think this is paired with a quote he gave earlier in the offseason where he specifically said he's excited to work with Drake London and Bijan and did not mention Kyle Pitts. He also got led into mentioning, like saying this, like, how will you use Kyle Pitts? Jacob, I'll start with you. Kyle Pitts tied in 1 in fantasy now?
Believe it when I see it. That's a wait and see for me. I will. I mean, tight end landscape's changing, right? Some of the good guys are getting old. There's chance for him to creep in, but I'm not sold. I need to see it before I just like rank him highly again. Like I just can't get disappointed again.
He's going to be ranked as such, but yeah, I mean the tight end, it's not the wasteland it used to be. I mean, there's a lot of good tight ends, so he's going to have a hard time getting there. Not to say he can't, but I'm with you. I'll believe it when I see it.
Jesse, you're a known Kyle Pitts pants pooper, right?
Yeah, it was ever since Casey's Tales from the Pits parody, his Simpsons parody that he did. It's really interesting because one of the reasons that I am successful in Dynasty right now is I drafted Pitts at his highest possible value and then promptly traded him. So in our startup, he was one of my top picks, right? Because back then, 2 years ago, everybody had him in a startup very, very high. And I was kind of like, this makes me nervous. And I really wanted Saquon because Saquon was coming off of an injury. And Steven was really pushing the Saquon thing. And I ended up winning 2 leagues because I listened to that year. But yeah, one of the biggest moves was moving Kyle Pitts right after our startup before the season started, because then, man, he's just been a bust since then, especially at that value that I had taken him at and then what I sold him for at the time. So it's tough.
He was the tight end 1 in Dynasty for a little bit there.
He was.
That's when we did our startup, he was.
Yeah.
and he was so high. Everyone was still so high on him. He's going before a lot of receivers and all sorts of stuff. Like,
those days are gone.
I'm a Florida Gators fan, so I loved the guy coming out. I thought it would be interesting, right, to see this kind of wide receiver body on a tight end, if this could work. And yeah, I don't know what's going on in Atlanta.
But it's going to work this year, right?
Someday maybe they'll figure out how to use all those weapons, but we'll see.
Here's what I will say though. Even if it doesn't happen this year, the guy's going to be still just 24 when the season starts. I mean, we finally saw it with Evan Ingram at age 28 kind of hit. It took a while. So Pitts.
Well, he had an early peak too. Didn't he have he had the best rookie season.
He did have a good rookie season. It wasn't anything insane, but it was good for a rookie tight end. But Pitts he still has plenty of time to do something.
Yeah.
So
he's the tight end version of Jameson Williams right now. That's where we're at.
I believe
Keep
in you,
holding
Kyle.
out hope. I believe in Jameson Williams. So if you tell me that,
there you go.
Maybe there's some hope there.
Still my guy there, Jameson Williams and Kyle Pitts. I believe in you, Kyle, but you should have given Kirk that jersey number. That was kind of rude.
No, Andrew.
They couldn't. It was expensive.
The
NFL was
Kirk's very
them,
pragmatic. He would have had to buy every
Yeah.
Kyle Pitts printed jersey.
Yep.
That makes me feel better.
It was financial.
Speaking of big money, more big on like the dynasty streets. A massive extension for Devontae Smith, wide receiver for the Eagles, got a 3-year, $75 million extension. This will keep him on the team through 2028 because this basically bought out his 5th-year option and then got him a couple years tacked on top of it. So he'll be now on the team through 2028. He signed that deal on Monday. I think the biggest news here to kind of push us quickly through this is he's now on the team. Let's say A.J. Brown moves on after a couple years in Dynasty. You got yourself a wide receiver 1 in Devontae Smith. Nothing you got to worry about. Steve, Jacob, any quick thoughts on Devontae Smith there getting this extension?
I would expect they should have extended him. I think it's a good signing for them. He's a good football player.
And now T. Higgins is
and by the time
even more.
AJ Brown he's a free agent in 2027.
Wow.
That means he's going to be 27 when the season starts. So he'll be pushing 30. So I doubt AJ Brown gets another extension with the Eagles. So yeah, Devonta Smith could be the number one there. And I mean, he's kind of like I guess he's not a 1B in Philly, but I mean, he's good.
Best wide receiver too in the league, I think.
Yeah,
absolutely. And looking at that AJ Brown contract, very well might cut him after this season and definitely the season after. He's not playing there in 2026. So some long-term stuff to look into, I would certainly say so. The last bit of news we want to cover is the Rashee Rice situation ongoing. Again, terrible situation. Caught street racing, 6-car pileup, put a lot of people's lives in danger. We're getting more information on it in terms of the official allegations and what he's being pressed with. And basically what I'm seeing is he turned himself in. So we're finally getting all of that rolling out. And I don't know if you guys have been following what Drew Davenport has been putting out. He's the one Venn diagram. People who play fantasy football, lawyers, and people who tweet. So that's the only crossover. So Drew is our guy, giving us his estimation on punishment. He's saying 1 to 2 games. So basically, I'm not panicking. Go buy if you can. And he's probably still the wide receiver 1 there. Jacob, you agree there?
Yeah, it sounds like he's going to get a slap on the wrist. And I think, unless it was AI generated, I saw a video today of Patrick Mahomes throwing him the football in some training facility. Hollywood
unless
Brown
it was
there
AI
too.
generated.
Yeah,
you never
know these days.
I know. It's funny that you don't know.
Remember, Steven, that one? It was the Iowa offensive coordinator that I sent you. That
you could crawl out of my ass.
Yeah, so incredibly real. I thought it was real.
Yeah.
Alrighty. Well, that's all the big news. Flying through that, and now into the meat of this podcast. We want to talk rookie player comparisons. We are just under a week, or just under 8 days away from the NFL draft, and we want to start figuring out maybe if you guys get this guy at the 105, this is what he's really worth. So this is kind of what the 105 is worth. So we're going to talk about where we would compare some of these top tier players and some lower end players, rookies, and where they compare to other rookie profiles. Jesse's, of course, going to take the lead. He's got a spreadsheet that he's been filling out because testing week, we love that as teachers, go testing week. And it's just got an insane amount of players that we're going to see where these guys rank up coming into the league. So pretending that we do not know what the heck they did in the NFL, just college alone, and where they stack up there. And then we're going to obviously have comments on that. I can't not talk. And then myself, Steve, and Jacob will really dive into, all right, well, Caleb Williams is really good, but would you trade him? Would you rather have him or Joe Burrow? Would you rather have him or Patrick Mahomes? So we're going to cover all sides of this because we got you. Starting with it, of course, I mean, it's hard not to start this draft with Caleb Williams. So in Superflex Leagues, Consensus 101, NFL 101, where do you have them stacked up there, Jesse, in terms of just raw prospects?
Yeah, so, this model that I've used before, Stephen and Casey last year, they compared it to the Caesar walking out at the gladiatorial games. And he walks out with his thumb, and then either gives the thumbs down or the thumbs up, and it's like Casey's like, where are these numbers coming from and everything else? They're coming from me. They're coming from me scouting and watching college football since 1998 and trying to think about these players and the types of things that you should look for. So into this model, I created a model that has arm strength, accuracy, athleticism, frame, production, and then a clutch category. And that's where Casey, of course, would have arguments about all these things for sure. But
where's the face test category?
Yeah, face test. He would want that incorporated for sure. So, plugging those numbers in and thinking about what we thought of these prospects coming out is hard because you have recency bias. You have bias in the way that they've played in the league. It's really hard not to push Patrick Mahomes up your list a bit. You know what I mean? Seeing how he might be the GOAT now. But coming out, what did we think of him? Really realistically, athleticism and frame, were we really high on those things? He's kind of skinny. He wasn't considered really like a scrambler. He was a guy with a big arm at a school that threw the ball 50 times a game. It's just hard to measure those things. But that being said, Caleb Williams, going across the board, I see him as like a top 5 all-time prospect since 98, since I've kind of been looking at this. The players I have in front of him are Trevor Lawrence, Joe Burrow, Andrew Luck, and Peyton Manning. And they could be in any amount of order because Caleb Williams kind of gets the same types of scores as those guys, looking at strength, accuracy, athleticism, frame, production, and clutch, all of those things together. So, I mean, we've said it before. I think he is very, very good. I think that he is one of the top prospects that we've had in a long time.
Now, Jesse, when you were putting this together, you're looking at this strictly football, not so much fantasy, correct?
No, it would be because the Anthony Richardson thing is one of the most interesting ones, right? Because as a fantasy football player, we had him ranked pretty high. Everybody got very excited. As an actual football player, I gave him a 2 out of 5 in accuracy. He's one of the most inaccurate quarterbacks coming out of that class. He completed like half his passes.
That number was probably too high.
Hey.
So yeah, but fantasy wise, that does change things, right? So we're just trying to look at prospect and kind of where you would have them. We've seen with Trevor Lawrence, he's one of my top ranked players ever. I think people would agree, right? As a prospect coming in, but fantasy wise, like he hasn't been that exciting. So it's, when you can break down these numbers as prospects, but you also need to look at fantasy purposes. And when you look at fantasy purposes, I think Caleb Williams has the opportunity to be better than those guys that I listed off because he does have that scrambling ability, right? And he does actually use his legs. So that's where I think he could easily climb into the top fantasy quarterback maybe ever, because we're talking about a much more athletic Patrick Mahomes. That's a scary thought, right?
Yeah,
absolutely. And speaking of fantasy, let's hop into that portion of this. He clearly is an amazing prospect, but I got my little graphics set up here to kind of be in some easy comparisons. How I set this up is basically we have Caleb Williams, and then I pulled a guy essentially from like a different tier of dynasty rankings. So, Steven, where do you think he kind of stacks up? Would you put him more towards the Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, like way up their QB tier, more of that middling Burrow, or even the kind of the guys where like, what are you, Trevor Lawrence range? Where would you take him right now, or what would you trade for him right now?
It's hard because there's so many good quarterbacks right now. Like, I would not take him over like these elite guys. I would not take him over Mahomes, would not take him over Hurts or any of those guys. I probably would not take him over Stroud. No, I wouldn't. I would take Stroud because I think it's very realistic Stroud has a better season this year. Absolutely. I still think, though, Caleb's ceiling is higher than Stroud's. I would, I might take him over Burrow. I think his ceiling could be higher than Burrow's. I think his ceiling higher than Herbert's. And then you start to get into an age thing too a little bit. I mean, quarterbacks can play a long time, but you got Burrow. He's going to be almost 28 when the season starts. Caleb's just 21 right now. Lamar Jackson, I'd love to have Lamar for the next 3 years, but you could make an argument of, Caleb is 6 years younger than him. So it kind of gets into that. What's your preference in dynasty? How is your team built? But I like him probably right after, what do I have here? The 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think there's kind of like a big 5. I think I like him right after about Lamar Jackson.
What are your thoughts there, Jacob? Where do you kind of place him in this hierarchy?
I'm a little bit lower than what Steve's at, but I get it with where his ceiling can kind of land. I'm more like the after Herbert, kind of next to Murray range. And I see some similarities there with Kyler, and I think Chicago's set up better than what Arizona has ever been, but I feel like he could kind of get in that spot in fantasy where he's really elite when he's on the field. No reason to believe he won't be, but it's the only thing that could really limit his upside. I'd still have a hard time not taking Herbert over him with just what we've seen on the field and what we haven't seen yet with Caleb, but I get it. The ceiling's there.
All right. Okay. Yes. Got it. All right. So I just got off the phone and somebody wants to trade me. I have the 101, make believe 101 in a super flex league. And they said, I am offering you for your 101, Joe Burrow in a mid-second. What are you answering? So 101, assuming Caleb Williams for Burrow in a mid-second. Steven, pulling the trigger?
I think I'm going to keep Caleb. I think I'd rather have the 101. I don't feel like I've got a lock at the with a mid-second. I like the situation too much for Caleb that he's walking into. I think the talent around him. I think, if he doesn't do amazing right away, people are going to be like, oh, we knew he was a bust or something, but he's going to hold value next year. I don't care what he does. He could have a really bad season. He's still going to be ranked not too far off where he is right now. And if he does anything, he throws a 3 touchdown pass game week 1, he's right there behind like Jalen Hurts, maybe even ahead of Jalen Hurts in dynasty rankings. So, I think I'll still hold on to Caleb.
Jacob, I'm in the group chat. Same with you, Jesse. I just texted in the group chat. Do I take this deal? Do I take this deal? Jacob, do I take the deal?
No, I'd keep the Burrow side. I like proven commodities on my fantasy team. I'm less risk adverse, I guess, but Steve makes a good point though. Dynasty quarterbacks, especially ones that are drafted in the first round, they hold their value very well moving into that next season. Justin Fields being a really good recent example of that. Last year, he had extremely high value in fantasy, especially. Not so much this year, but still holds a lot of value.
Yeah, I think you get like a 2-year grace period.
Yeah.
If you, well, I don't even know if it's a full 2 years. You could
Zach
go
Wilson was still going up in value at some point.
Yeah,
Trey Lance eventually,
you'll hit a cliff. I don't know if we call it the Zach Wilson cliff or something, but eventually that happens, and then it's toast. But yeah, these guys, especially, you got to take into account the intangibles he has, the rushing upside, the arm, like just the ability to improvise. A lot of these other quarterbacks that fall off just didn't have that. Like Tua falling off, it's because he's not as exciting. Tua's been great the last couple of years, but he can't climb up into that tier because he's, not as athletic as these guys, doesn't have the big arm. Those things, they carry weight in Dynasty.
Jesse, again, just heading the phone to you real quick. Do I want Caleb Williams or Joe Burrow in a mid-second?
Stevens taught me that the rushing upside is always the tiebreaker in those situations. So, again, ranking prospects and football players, Joe Burrow's 1 or 2 for me of like coming out guys I'm into. I would build a program around him, but with fantasy, that rushing upside is always something I'm going to choose. It's that cheat code thing that Steven taught me years ago. So I'm going to stick with Caleb Williams in that situation.
So Absolutely. we know he can run. Do we think he's actually going to run
enough
to make a difference?
The thing I was thinking about that's really interesting is so Deshaun Watson didn't really run in college. But do you remember that first year with the Texans where he scored 36
he was
fantasy
running
points
for his
one
life.
game?
What did they have there in Houston?
I know, but that's part of the point is Justin Fields did not run in college. Deshaun Watson did not run in college. Kyler Murray ran in college, but frame rise, that's a whole different situation. I gave him a 2 in frame, and maybe that might be too generous, right? He's a little guy.
Lawrence ran in college.
Trevor Lawrence actually ran more in college than he does now, which is interesting, right? So you never really know, but I just, for some reason, I'm thinking of, you remember Deshaun Watson's value in Dynasty after he literally had 75 points in 2 games, and everybody was just like, what?
That's what happened with Stroud, or is happening with Stroud.
Yeah, but it's with that rushing piece where he's just kind of running all over the place. Caleb has that gear. If that's, you just have to realize he has that gear. And some of the guys we don't know, we don't know if they have that gear. We maybe haven't seen it. We know that they're maybe athletic. JJ McCarthy is an example because I saw the gear because I watched him when he was a freshman, but people are like, oh, he just stands in the pocket and hands the ball off. But these guys are athletic. They have that capability. So Caleb Williams is like a running back with the ball in his hands. He is more elusive than Anthony Richardson. He's very close to the Kyler Murray thing, but with a bigger frame. So hopefully he won't blow anything up, So yeah, it's interesting, but yeah, that's why I'm going with the potential.
Caleb's got some nice quads. You got some tree trunks moving people with them legs out there. Absolutely. So some other guys that they can wiggle a little bit too. The second QB tier. I think whether or not you like May or Daniels more, you can easily lump these guys in the same tier. No one's really, you can get nitpicky with it, but I kind of bumped it down a tier. May and Daniels. They're definitely below Williams. Now, Jesse, where'd you kind of slot these guys in terms of prospect wise on your grand prospect sheet?
Yeah, so I mean, I think Drake May, the other part about doing this and like grading it out and watching film and doing everything else, I do think Drake May is better than Jaden Daniels. Like, I think that he's a better prospect. He's younger, the frame is much better, and you're getting not quite that level of athleticism, right? But just about everything else is better. So it's just,
still a good athlete.
Still a good, that's what I'm saying.
Really
Still a good athlete. And then pretty much everything else. So, for me, kind of the Baker Mayfield, Justin Fields, Sam Bradford. I actually really liked Vince Young. He's one of my favorite college players. Obviously didn't do much in the NFL, but that's kind of
he did win Rookie of the Year.
Yeah, that's kind of the area, right? I think if you're really being honest with yourself, he has to be just as high of a prospect as CJ Stroud. Like, I think that they're actually very, very similar. I gave him pretty much the same score. And we see now what the value is with CJ Stroud. They're very, very similar players, honestly. So that's kind of where I'm looking at Drake May. Jaden Daniels, just a tick down. It's funny because in this system, I graded him as like Robert Griffin, very close to Robert Griffin. And then he's a comp that I've used before. Matt Stafford, Jameis Winston are kind of all in that area, but very different quarterbacks. So it's just, that's the part that's not apples to apples sometimes. But I think, I think they are top. If they're drafted in the top 5 in the NFL, I think that's appropriate. So
100%.
Yep.
And I kind of looking at your sheet here, I think it's kind of, I like the way you did it. You laid it out in terms of like numbers, and there's a 1 through 5 ranking. You see with Drake May in that area, he's even across the board. He's just got to figure it out in the league. It's not perfect. He's definitely not one of those top 5 guys, but everything looks good. Where you have Jaden Daniels, you drop down and there's some low numbers on there. It's like this one flaw could just tank him. Like everything else looks good, that could tank him. And
yeah,
that's who you have for him is that frame.
And that Bryce Young is an example, right?
Absolutely.
Where it's like, God, he was so good, Heisman Trophy winner, great college quarterback. That frame has been an issue, and he was my one. That was a baseline, as a teacher, when you're grading on a curve, set the curve. Bryce Young is the 1 for a frame. Jaden Daniels is like a 2. It's not much more. Robert Griffin, like a 2. They are very thin, and that I was super high on Bryce Young. I thought he would be great, and it hasn't looked great. But Steven can also talk about him with retaining value because he's still, he's still a draftable guy in startups, right? But it was hard for him that first year. So the frame thing makes me a little nervous. And I think that is why I am leaning Drake May. I think even if Drake May goes 3rd, like if Washington decides on Daniels, just the more I think about it, I'm like, I think Drake May is just such a safer pick.
Yeah, Jesse, to your point, Bryce Young, I don't have like Dynasty ADP in front of me or anything, but we have him ranked about 65 overall in Superflex. I mean, and he had probably one of the worst rookie seasons you could have.
Consensus has him right behind May, right ahead of Watson.
Yeah.
There you go.
I mean, that if
he did nothing.
And he did nothing. And prospect wise, I mean, like Jesse just said, he's tiny, didn't have the big arm, doesn't have the things that you get excited about as a fantasy player about a quarterback, and he still maintained value. So
yeah. All right. Well, gentlemen, I just got another phone call. Yep. All right. I'll talk to my people about it. So you have the 103 in a super flex draft already, and you're just guaranteed, like we're going to say Caleb Marv goes, and you really need a quarterback, and you're pretty much guaranteed May or Daniels, your pick of the flavor. But someone else calls up and says, hey, I'll give you Trevor Lawrence for that 103. Are you taking that? Another guy calls, I'll give you Brock Purdy. I'll give you Aaron Rodgers. Where you land in terms of where you would move that 103 or this Drake May, Jaden Daniels? Steve, what would it take?
It's so funny because I'm looking at Brock Purdy right before you said that. And that was where I was going to be like, because with Brock Purdy, okay, he's not exciting, but what if he is kind of a Tom Brady sort of player?
Yeah, he's like just super consistent for a long time on a really good team
and attached to the right coach.
Yeah.
Yep.
So for me, like I would rather have Lawrence. I'd rather have Dak Prescott. I'd rather have Brock Purdy. Where it gets interesting for me is like the Tua, Jared Goff. I think I'm going to take a chance on those guys ahead of like Tua, Goff, and players ranked below. I think that's about where I take those guys.
Yeah, I fully agree with him, Andrew. So you can skip me.
Oh, excellent. Love that. Jacob, give us your thoughts.
I would much rather have these rookies over someone like Brock Purdy that could actually move the needle on my fantasy team with their rushing upside and just upside overall. Brock Purdy is fine. He is not going to win you a fantasy championship, and I'll die on that hill, I guess. But Jane Daniels can actually be that difference maker. I'd have a tough time once you got to like Dak and like Jordan Love. I don't think I'd be able to pull the trigger there.
Now we're talking Superflex, right?
Yeah.
I think we've kind of turned this rookie talk into Superflex, so I just want to make sure because you take a Jaden Daniels. My worry about a player like May or Daniels, yes, they will hold that value, but what if they don't do anything for you the first couple of years and then they're just replaced? Kind of like we've seen with a Sam Darnold type or a Zach Wilson. That's my only fear with them. Whereas, I don't know. I get what you're saying though. The upside's different, but I mean, Brock was, almost 19 points per game.
Well, and I think that's why these kind of this like all-time thinking about prospects in this kind of range. There are Vince Youngs and Robert Griffins and Jameis Winston's in that Jaden Daniels prospect range.
Deshaun Watson's.
There's a couple landmines.
Two of those were rookie of the years.
There's a couple landmines in there. Yeah, and that's the other part that's interesting too. Is like, but like Steven's talking about of where they're like out of the league, where they've been replaced. That's where I don't know. That is tough, and you do want the frame. You do want a guy that is going to have a lasting, like stay on the field. Like even Anthony Richardson, it's really interesting. He's been injury prone all the way through college, so we just need that guy to stay on the field. So let's see what happens this year. But I think those things are a factor.
This is why I think this is just an advertisement to change your leagues to Superflex.
Yep.
Because people that have the second or third pick, let's say the third pick, like Andrew's saying, this is like oh my God, what am I going to do decision, which is just what NFL franchises go through, right? Like the Redskins or I'm still doing that.
Flagged them. Now we can't post this. Flagged them.
Washington, the team there in Washington, they're going to have that dilemma. And the Jets have had it in very recent years. So I don't know.
Yeah, you don't want your fantasy team to be like the Jets.
No, don't be the Jets.
That's not a model of consistency for especially quarterback selections.
Avoid being the Jets. Yeah, these guys will present upside. Do you take the upside? Do you take the known commodity? It's going to be spicy. Well, we'll get a little bit more into that. And I think this gets real tough. Now we drop down to that third quarterback tier. I placed JJ McCarthy in a tier of his own. Yeah, there's your Brock Purdy guy. I've been copping him all offseason to Brock Purdy, JJ McCarthy. He's, I think, in a tier of his own. He's moved well above Nix and Michael Penix. I would not put him with Daniels and May just yet. He might be drafted ahead of them in the real NFL. So, Jesse, where do you have this JJ McCarthy and I argue Zach Wilson physical lookalike? Not. What does that lead to? I don't know in the NFL. Maybe I don't know. But where do you have him in the rankings prospect wise?
So I think that he's really good, and I think that like for some reason his name was dragged through the mud early in the draft process, and then there was a ton of momentum, and he's been skyrocketing up, and then everybody knows he's going to be the next Vikings quarterback now. You look at the odds and everything else. That group of guys that you had in there, Brock Purdy, Aaron Rodgers, and Daniel Jones, way better prospect than those players. Like it's not
as
close.
Prospects
as a prospect. Yeah. I mean, he's better. He was a better high school prospect. He was a blue chip back then. None of those guys were that. He won a national championship. None of those guys were that type of player. Like he is a better college player than those players that we just listed off. Now that doesn't mean like all I can speak to is what he did in college and the type of like projection that could be there. And so, yeah, I get it. And I think what's happened, what's really, really interesting is like, we're just not used to there being 6 really good quarterbacks. We're not really like, not used to it. And so I think what you guys have done, I've watched you and Jacob and even Steven to an extent, is it's like, well, I know there's always this big fall off. There's this elite tier, and then they all fall off. And then it's Trey Lance, right? So he's going to be Trey Lance because when you're 3 quarterbacks deep, even if he's selected 3rd, 4th overall, he's going to be Trey Lance. And it's like, he's just a way better prospect than all those guys. Zach Wilson doesn't even make it into my prospect database. Like, I was not like, Zach Wilson was selected because you had to as a team. They were like, we have to. We have no quarterback, right? And there's that thing that happens. But I think all these guys are starting NFL quarterbacks. I didn't feel that way about, like, Trey Lance and Zach Wilson was an experiment. It's like Mitchell Trubisky was like, he might be, shrug. Daniel Jones was like, he might be a starting quarterback in the NFL. I don't think these guys are as big of experiments, if that makes sense. And we're just used to it falling off. Right. I mean, that's just what we're used to. And it's like, if there's ever a year where it should go quarterback, this is probably the year. And it's not just because there's QB needy teams. It's because I think that these quarterbacks could be franchise quarterbacks. Now for fantasy, I don't know. We'll have to see. I wish that McCarthy would run around a bit, because I think that would raise his value. I think he could be the kind of boring Brock Purdy guy that Jacob doesn't like, but could still be a decent fantasy player. So,
Jacob, defend yourself. Wait, you are at the. I have no idea what pick JJ McCarthy could go at, but you've got that pick. Would you rather have JJ or Brock Purdy?
I'd rather have JJ's upside. Well, especially if he goes to a place like Minnesota, like we're kind of talking about, and where he's being mocked to. The weapons there, like, he could be Kirk Cousins, and Kirk Cousins for fantasy has been.
Brock Purdy is Kirk Cousins.
Yeah, already less fun.
Kirk Cousins wasn't Kirk Cousins until like recent. Like Kirk Cousins wasn't not a compliment until very recently. Yeah. So that's kind of scary.
Even more towards floor.
I want to see I wanted him to wear number 8 if he goes there.
That would be honestly slightly disrespectful. But yeah, would you again the phone calls? I got a phone call from the future. Okay, yeah, Sean Payton. Oh wow, he just traded up for the 4th pick. He's the guy who went and got JJ McCarthy. Gentlemen, now do we want JJ or Brock Purdy? Do we want JJ or Aaron Rodgers? Do we want JJ or Daniel Jones? Where's he land now for you?
I got to sit this one out, fellas. I'm too close to it.
Too close to home.
Yeah, the Broncos. I am so not excited about him going to the Broncos for fantasy purposes.
Move on, Steven. Become a Colts fan. Join me.
No, I'd rather have Brock if he goes to Denver.
I think so too.
Mm-hmm.
Where are you guys at with Sean Payton? I'm still kind of on the fence if he's
good.
If he's over the hill as like a coach. You know, like remember like when Mike Shanahan went back to the Commanders or went back to football and was like a Commanders coach. We've seen that sometimes with head coaches. I just wonder if he's still got it, you know.
Here's the issue. He's the GM there. Like he's not, but he is. Like he is sending in the card. So that's my issue is he's going to surrender. So he's going to make so many issues out of this team because he's going to put forth all the stuff to win now, make all the decisions to win now. And it might not be the best for the team long term. So I think if he was just coaching and running an offense, I love it. He made Russell Wilson look good, guys. I know not look good. Sorry, statistically look good.
Russell Wilson has been good.
That was not that Russ. He got exposed. He lost the athleticism. He couldn't do half the things he needed to do.
No,
I think Sean's fine.
I think the panic meter in Denver is pretty high when I talk to people that live around here and just their thoughts on Sean Payton and like, you know, did we because it also cost us draft picks to go get him, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And just you're talking about maybe possibly 2 really bad business decisions that are setting us back a really long time. I think if you're doing business decisions in Denver, you need to sit where you're at. And if Latu or Jared Verse fall to you, you need
Brock Bowers.
You need to or Brock Bowers. You need to take like a kind of a big time move the whole team type of player like that.
Yeah.
And then maybe you trade up into the back of the first to get Penix or something, you know, or to get Bo Nix if he falls. Like, you know, I don't think I am hoping that they don't trade up for a quarterback.
If they do,
because
I'm
we
with
just
you,
have
Jesse.
given up. We've just given up so many resources that now the team, there's no depth. Like we're lacking depth all over the place. And that's where, if you just sit where you're at, Bo Nix falls to you, I would probably be okay with that. Like we're not jumping up super high. Like that's not overdrafting really. I think that's about his range. If we slide back, I would actually love that. Get some picks, like get some more picks, and then get Penix or Nix later in the first round. Like I think that would actually be really smart. But the moving up and trying to, it's like, man, we've thrown 2 Hail Marys in a row that were intercepted. So it's just like maybe we should check it down a little bit. Like let's just try and get a first down.
Russ
now.
did that a lot last year, actually.
Hey, also Andrew, if you could make a little note, we're gonna get a Broncos jersey announcement on Monday.
Oh,
get ready for me to be triggered.
I'll get that.
I already know I'm gonna hate him.
Let me get your reaction.
Is it? I've seen some leaked stuff. Is it the mountains on the shoulder? Like it has like mountains on the shoulder.
If it is, I'm already triggered. Like
so, what I've seen is white helmets with a big, thick orange stripe, and it's got mountains. It's like mountains on the shoulders, and it's helmets. The old Broncos logo.
I'm not just
or not the old one. Sorry, the current logo, but it's on a white helmet with it's like the thickest orange stripe you've ever seen. Like
dude, that's that is a Walmart jersey.
They've been talking about the Broncos for 10 minutes. Okay, yeah, this is gonna be your Broncos jerseys, guys. One of those. That is gonna be what we get out of this. Moving you guys on to, we're talking wide receiver prospects. Let's get excited again. Alrighty, we've got 2 elite. Somehow we've been blessed with a top-notch QB prospect, Caleb Williams, and an insane couple of top-notch wide receiver prospects. Jesse, tell us where Marvin Harrison Jr. out of Ohio State and Malik Neighbors rank on your all-time wide receiver prospect list.
I think even you can throw Rome in as well. I think that those 3 players are top 10 prospects all time. I really like them. You put them into this model. I will say I was very, very high on Jerry Jeudy. I should admit that. Like that's part of this process too, is trying to be unbiased. But I think Marvin Harrison, I look at him like a Jamar Chase, like a Jerry Jeudy, like a CD Lamb, like a JSN. I'm a little worried about that one too. But I'm very high on those players. I think that he is one of the top receiver prospects ever. And then, I think Neighbors and Rome are not far off. I like those players more than Garrett Wilson. I like those players more than Devonta Smith. I like them more than Treylon Burks, more than Jamison Williams, more than Corey Davis, more than Jordan Addison.
Don't say Drake London.
Well, Drake London's a lot further down my list, to be honest. But yeah, you can go back and look. I mean, I had Drake London behind Garrett Wilson and behind Treylon Burks and behind Jamison Williams, and I was like the only guy that did that. I have not been as high on him as as everyone else. And
so far you haven't been wrong.
So we'll see. But I just think these are looking like 3 kind of can't misses to me. But you say that, and then there's a Jerry Jeudy up at the top of the list too. So, you don't know what's going to happen, or a Corey Davis.
Now, I do have a question about this, Jesse, because I know that your I'd like you to fill this out even more so at some point, because this is interesting. I'm enjoying this. But I know with quarterbacks, you went back to 98, but with wide receivers, you didn't go back as far.
Right.
Because I definitely would see a Calvin Johnson sitting somewhere in the top 5.
Right.
But
top 1.
My question is, he was more of like just a freak, raw, physical, insane wide receiver. But I mean, Georgia Tech wasn't really like your wide receiver school necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
So Marvin Harrison, I'm just curious where he compares to like Calvin Johnson, because I kind of think of Calvin Johnson, and it's been a minute since he was drafted, but is like one of the best prospects we'd seen coming out.
Yeah. So like frame, he would be the 6, right? Like he would be like the best frame of all time. So I only gave, I tried to do 1 through 5 for everything, but if I thought you were like the best that I've seen, so he would be a 6 in frame, and his speed was insane, right? For the size he was. So he'd be like a 5 there, 5 contested. The clutch thing, I kind of saved that for wide receivers, is like, did you play on championship teams? Did you play on and he didn't do that. So that's where he'd get knocked down. But no, I think that Larry Fitzgerald and Calvin Johnson, I didn't make it that far back. but those would be the two guys that I would probably have ahead of him as far as like when they were coming out. It was like, okay, this is we can take this guy in the top 5 picks and he can change our team around. But yeah, I mean, that doesn't happen that often, right? If he goes number 4, like that doesn't happen that often. There's a reason that's happening. He is a really, really good prospect.
Absolutely. And so now we got to kind of figure out what to do with this guy. And Underdog, we keep complaining about it. He's going wide receiver 10 and redraft next year. So let's kind of pull this into dynasty. Yeah, I think that's a huge overprice. With Malik Neighbors, Marvin Harrison, I have Rome just on the next group of guys, but we can really group them all in. Are we putting Marvin instantly into, I would like Marvin, Jamar Chase, don't really care. I'd take either one at the same rate. I would put Marvin Malik more by AJ Brown or Marvin Malik more like Drake London region. Jacob, I'll let you start. Where do you kind of let them fall immediately out of the draft?
Marv, I think, is more tier 2 for me. I would not put him in the Jefferson Chase Lamb spot quite yet. I feel like that's a
make him earn it.
That's a tier you got to kind of earn. I'd like to play the name game here because I'm looking at consensus rankings, and where they kind of have Marv is very interesting. So would you rather have, Steve, Marv or Garrett Wilson?
I'll take Marv.
How about Marv or Puka Nacua?
I'll take Marv.
Oh,
yeah. Marv or AJ Brown?
Marv.
Yeah. That one's less outstanding.
That one's less outstanding. Well, they have AJ Brown at 5.
Where do they have
Amon-Ra? They have at 4. They actually have Amon-Ra in the same tier as the top 3 guys.
I think I'd take him over Amon-Ra. My only fear with Amon-Ra, I think he's very good. I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't attach him to this player, but I what if he goes the Jarvis Landry route? You know, he's not this elite. He was an elite prospect coming out, but he's had 2 really, or maybe 3 now, really good seasons. Jarvis Landry, kind of a similar type player to Amon-Ra, and completely, I mean, he's out of the league now. And he fell from grace pretty quickly. And a player like Amon-Ra, I think he could never get higher than he is right now. I think you said he's at 4. I think he'll never get higher than that. Whereas Marvin Harrison could be the wide receiver 1.
Yeah.
And I don't think he's going to be worse than, like, I think he's going to be good. I think the chances of him not hitting are pretty small.
If you can go get Puka plus something for Marv, I would go do that right now.
Yeah. If you can get a guy who can be top 5 and then get something additional, like Puka, a top 5 wide receiver plus something for Marv, yeah, I think that's where I end up moving that pick. I absolutely agree. And Jarvis is a good comparison, Steven. I went and looked. I was kind of just ready to attack you for that. Similar to the Trey Benson, Adrian Peterson thing you'll never live down. But yeah, Jarvis Landry, wide receiver 8 his first year, wide receiver 14, wide receiver 6, wide receiver 18, wide receiver 12. Dude never finished in a better than wide receiver 33 again in his career. So to your point, that was actually a great comp to really drop in there. So moving the talks forward to Rome, I think Rome is probably a little bit below those guys. But Jesse kind of disagrees there. Where do you guys have Rome in these talks?
Well, I think it's interesting that you got DK in there, because I look at Neighbors and I think I kind of have a DK vibe with it. Mm-hmm. Like just kind of the level that he's in. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I like Rome more than Drake London. So we
know you do. He's a Drake London hater, everyone. I'm outing him right now. He hates Drake London. He thinks he stinks.
But I think he might end up. The only thing is Rome might end up in a Drake London situation. You know, if he goes to the Giants, I don't know. Then
much worse.
You got a guy that nobody can get him the ball. So, and we've seen that affect Drake London. I mean, he may have been way better on a team that had a quarterback that could get him the ball. We'll see what happens. But yeah, for me, I don't know. That's really interesting when you talk about kind of in the same, if those guys are all in the same kind of tier in dynasty.
You just mentioned the Giants. If somebody goes, any of these wide receivers go to the Giants, rankings are getting adjusted severely. They're getting adjusted severely.
What if the Giants move up though and take Penix in the second, or like Spencer Rattler in the second round, or was there any saving that? I don't know. They need
not
to do
Spencer
something.
Rattler.
Not with Rattler, no.
They want to play.
I've actually heard,
but Penix. I mean, if they had Penix with his old wide receiver, I don't know. I'm a little more intrigued by that.
I've been seeing a lot of mocks because I just look at mocks pretty much every day for the last like 3 months. Spencer Rattler's getting he's climbing. Just
He might go in the second.
yeah, like that would be a little like wild to me, but I've just telling you like the movement that I've been seeing, and like a lot of the don't be surprised if, and it's going to be one of these teams that has a quarterback that you're like, yeah, are we sure, and they're gonna take him high, but we'll see what happens.
I don't think the Giants are disgusting. I don't want my top guy to go there. It's just it's being compared to the Cardinals at 4 and the Chargers at 5. Like, yes, I want those better. I wouldn't like it wouldn't just ruin. It's not the Patriots. Like if the Patriots forego quarterback at 3, I guess it's Jacoby Brissett. I don't know. These guys are awesome. I think they're going to do well wherever they go. But gentlemen, I just got another phone call. All right.
You're not supposed to have your phone during the podcast.
Shh, I'm on the phone. I can't hear you. Oh, okay. So they just told me Adonai Mitchell is on the Bills, went in the late first round. Where are you taking him? Let's go crazy, folks.
I like him a lot more if that happens. I'll tell you that.
Andrew, my question is, where are you taking him? He's
going
over
one. Is that
Roma
appropriate?
Dunze if he lands there for you.
I am not that crazy. I have to put it out there. I have to put it on the record. I have Brian Thomas, even him, ranked above Adonai Mitchell right now. But Jesse, I'm gonna jump to you. Where do you have these guys? This is a tier of Adonai Mitchell, Ladd McConkey, Xavier Worthy. Brian Thomas might jump above this tier, but where do you generally have these guys?
Yeah, so if you look at like other kind of late first round wide receivers and just comparisons and stuff, that I think that's where it gets a little bit interesting, right? Is to, think about like look at Zay Flowers and be like, okay, Zay Flowers moved the needle in minicamp and became a pretty popular dynasty player by the end there, right? I think he's holding value pretty well. How do you like these players compared to him? These players, all those guys you listed, I like them more than him. Like they were better in college, if that's what we're talking about. And I don't think it's crazy to look at Jalen Waddle and get, Xavier Worthy and Jalen Waddle, kind of similar guys, like as far as college was concerned. And so, yeah, it's going to be really interesting. I think that this whole tier is very dependent on landing spot. Because if Adonai Mitchell goes to the Bills or to the Chiefs, then I'm looking at him more like Christian Watson, where, this is a guy that has a lot of potential and is now in a good situation. And that could be a decent comp at that point, right? But I don't know if he has the talent if he goes to a place that like has a bunch of receivers already or doesn't have a quarterback, so it's just, I think all 4 of those guys are in your dependent on landing spot kind of tier, if that makes sense. And I think you can look at them, all the players that they're around, kind of the N'Keal Harry, Drake London, Henry Ruggs, like those were high draft picks that went to kind of difficult situations and didn't do a whole lot, so I think you want a great landing spot, which is not rocket science, but that's kind of how I'm starting to feel about those 4 guys.
To your point, again, this is the tier of guys who are like mid to late first, so landing spot, like you said, does matter. And to your credit, you have Zay Flowers. You said he held value. He had to play with Lamar Jackson. Quentin Johnston, he just might suck. He had to play with Justin Herbert. But like Jay said,
he sucks.
He was at least ranked way higher, went to the bad situation, and that tanked a lot of value. So I think what you're saying is really, really important. Now, Steve and Jacob, I'll turn it to you guys. I kind of just tried to pull some, like, this is probably like a later first round, a super flex rookie startup kind of pick for, would you rather have one of those guys or Cooper Kupp, Christian Watson, Tyler Lockett on like the way lower end? Steven, let's just start. Where would you land these guys?
You talking about like Ladd, Troy, some of those guys?
Yeah, Ladd, Adonai Mitchell, Xavier Worthy, Brian Thomas.
And I think Troy Franklin is actually in this conversation as well.
I noticed any more pictures on this.
Him.
I don't like Troy Franklin. I'm going to get
the Troy Franklin thing's interesting because I've seen him going at the end of the first and I've seen him in the 3rd round. So it's like, there's a lot of variance there. Adonai's the same way. I've seen him, going ahead of everyone you've listed, and I've seen him going in the 3rd round. So it's like, man, it's going to be really interesting. But,
so Franklin's projected at 41.5 right now. That's where his draft line's at.
Okay.
Adonai Mitchell is at 17.5. So he's pretty guaranteed to go first round the way things are looking.
Wow.
Pick 17. Wow.
17 is where he's.
It's the same number that Brian Thomas has.
I think it's demand. A lot of that is demand.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, where you guys want to like start up?
That makes a big difference. If we're talking 17,
yeah,
like I'm way more in on him because I mean that's higher than JSN got drafted last year. You know, JSN right now is probably still a top 20 dynasty wide receiver right now. I mean, I would probably if he's going that high, let's just play that game. I'd probably take him ahead of Cooper Kupp, Stephon Diggs, probably behind like Rashee Rice territory. You know,
what if he goes? What if he goes to the Steelers?
He goes to the Steelers. No, let me move back.
It's actually a pretty solid landing spot.
Oh, yeah, I see some of it's really interesting. It's just like it's really going to be dependent because there are teams on that back half of the first round that really need a wide receiver. And then there are teams, you know, if they go to Baltimore, it's like, I don't know. Is he going to do anything that, you know, like any of those four guys? It's super, super interesting.
Yeah.
I think why they have that number at 17.5. Yep. Pulling it up here. Number 17, desperate for wide receiver is the Jacksonville Jaguars. I really think one of Brian Thomas or Adonai Mitchell, if the Jaguars don't trade up, I think they're a big time trade up to 9, grab Roman Dunze kind of team. But yeah, that's a great landing spot for one of those guys.
See, I don't think that the Jaguars are desperate.
Not desperate, I guess.
Why are you hating on my Zay Jones all the time, man?
Well, I'm just thinking they got Christian Kirk.
He's like the you know, he's holding up my whole team, Zay Jones in Dynasty, and you just keep hating on him.
He's the heart of your team.
That's right.
Well, I think people think Gabe Davis because of fantasy football is terrible. I actually think NFL wise, for the role he plays, I think he's good for what they are asking him to do. He can stretch the field. He's a great run blocker.
But say the same thing about Christian Kirk, and like that's their entire receiving corps. Oh, he's not terrible.
But they also got Evan Ingram at tight end. I don't know that
they have way more. They have needs on defense. Like
that's kind of where I'm leaning too.
You just score points, just outscore the other.
Not in that division. You barely need to do anything.
Whoa! All right.
It wasn't a shot at Houston, just at Indy, just to be clear.
Hey, Anthony won't take that. All right. But yeah, I think we're pretty much all in agreement here. This third wide receiver tier, good landing spot. We're gonna put them probably close to like whoever the top 3. Like so, if Rome, Marv, or Malik get a bad landing spot, they're going to start to push down towards whoever goes to a good landing spot here.
Yeah.
That's pretty much where it's going to go.
Yep.
And so with that wide receiver talk kind of over, there's a ton of wide receivers to talk about. I had to cut it somewhere I think draft process as a whole is forgetting these RBs. The running back position exists, but it's so hard to talk about because the wide receivers and quarterbacks are so good. Jesse, where do these running backs, the top 3, pretty much consensus everywhere, maybe Jalen Wright sometimes, but the main top 3 are Trey Benson out of Florida State, Jonathan Brooks out of Texas, and Blake Corum out of Michigan. Where are these guys as prospects for you, Jesse?
Just very different than those first 2 conversations because there's a lot of guys above them. You got to scroll down a ways, you know, to where you're kind of in that like James Cook, J.K. Dobbins, Miles Sanders, Zach Charbonnet, like Cam Akers,
as opposed to how he was talking about the receivers. Now he's like really quiet.
He's so sad.
Yeah, no, it isn't. They aren't. None of them are that kind of guy. And I think we got really spoiled last year. The Bijan and Jahmyr Gibbs thing, going back through and pumping those numbers in. Those are 2 of the higher prospects we've seen in a long time, and it showed in the draft. And I think that this is going to show in the draft it's going to be like Jonathan Brooks in the 2nd, and then those other 2 guys, Benson and Corum, will be in the 3rd. It'll be something like that where it just won't be as exciting this year.
Absolutely. And it's, like running backs, I think it's kind of like that third wide receiver tier of it depends where they go. So I want to start there. Got another phone call here. Sorry guys. I turned it on the do not disturb, but they're just pushing through. You know how like you can like notify anyway. They're getting through.
Mm-hmm.
I'm an active man. One of these guys just went in the 2nd round to the Cowboys. All right, your choice. I don't care who it is. Your favorite one. Now, where are you putting that guy in terms of dynasty startup or trade value?
I think if Jonathan Brooks goes to the Cowboys, which
he will,
one of those things that's been talked about, for dynasty purposes, he might be a top 12 running back for me. I'd probably.
Oh, hey,
I would.
That's
I would rather
James Cook line. You better be careful with.
I'd rather have him than James Cook if that happens.
Rachaad White.
I'd rather have him than Rachaad White.
Kenneth Walker.
Ooh, I don't. Yeah, I was so high on Kenneth Walker.
He's good.
You know what? I probably would. I'd probably prefer him to Kenneth Walker.
Oh,
wow.
I think I'd still like to have the couple seasons with Saquon. You know.
Yeah.
Right now, I still would probably rather have ETN, Kyron, Jonathan Taylor, some of those guys.
Josh Jacobs?
No, I think I'd take him over Jacobs just on an age thing.
I think that's kind of a rebuild versus win now kind of probably decision there.
The only other thing I'm going to throw into this conversation is if Blake Corum goes to a team where he can play right away, and you're a dynasty team that's competing for a championship, like he's so ready. He's ready to be an NFL quarterback. So if he goes to a situation where he's the number one guy, like I think he's going to perform. The vision, the speed is going to come back even more after the knee injury. So just if he goes to some team where he's like the second running back or they don't really run the ball, like it changes my perspective.
Yeah.
But and then I know for dynasty, he's older, very old for a running back. But I just think if you want to win now, I wouldn't be surprised if he was one of the better rookie running backs.
I think he could be like a Rachaad White, like an older running back that's kind of does it all, doesn't do anything maybe at the NFL level amazing, but could be good for fantasy purposes.
Yeah. My concern with these running backs is that they're kind of boring. It's in how they're going to go later in the draft than what we would like to see. Draft capital won't be great. It's that there's one landing spot we will be happy with, and that's Dallas, where they will be a guaranteed running back one. Aside from that,
what about the Giants?
Are you going to be excited to have the running back for the Giants? They're not
really, but I think they'd have the opportunity to play right away.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, they'd get the bulk of the workload, but
no,
it would be an ugly workload.
Will always be there. That guy,
Devin Singletary.
Every time I've tried to write that guy off as he's not competition, he's proven me wrong, and now I'm not doing it anymore, Jesse.
And they're not Saquon level prospects, so no, the Giants is the only other spot they would go and absolutely start. Maybe
the Chargers were the other exciting one, but we just had that fun ruined for us today.
Yeah.
What did Gino say? He's like, they tried to write me off, but I
didn't write back.
I didn't write back. Okay. Yeah, that's Devin Singletary.
I always write off.
Bengals would be an interesting one if they drafted a running back late.
Yeah, like Minnesota as well. Like it give them a year, and now with that old guy gone, now next year it's their backfield for sure. There's some not terrible landing spots, but like you said, there's one singular. He's in. You're thrilled.
Man, Andrew hates old people.
I do. Why did
at a certain point he doesn't even call them by name? Just old people.
Once you get past age 35, your driver's license should be revoked. That's all I'm saying. And before I get the chance to get yelled at, I'm moving on to tight ends. Brock Bowers. I'm just gonna go hop on Jesse's little sheet here. Go to the top. Oh, yep. Who's the guy? Number one tight end prospect for you graded?
That would be Brock Bowers, and then I think Kyle Pitts would be my second of all time. We're waiting for that to pan out. And then tight end's hard. It's hard to grade it and kind of remember it and look back at it. I really liked Dalton Kincaid. I really liked the Iowa tight ends that year, Hawkinson and Fant. If you think there was a lot of hype around Noah Fant back in the day. I liked Trey McBride. I got to watch him play. I liked all these guys more than Sam Laporta, who's now the tight end one in Dynasty. So it's just interesting. I do think the more I'm getting into it, I think there's a lot of value with Jatavian Sanders. I didn't get, far enough back into, like you said, Steven, I did less and less years as I went along here. But I like him more than Dulcich, more than Cole Kmet, more than Hayden Hurst. Those are guys that all ended up being starting tight ends in the NFL. So I think he's got some opportunity to make some noise, and at his value, nobody's really talking about him. I think you could pick him up in the second round and maybe get something out of that. But I think Brock Bowers is the best fantasy tight end prospect of all time. And for tight ends, it's hard to rank prospects by blocking, I'm not really looking for that was mostly looking at dynasty stuff. So I think he could be as good as you want him to be. I think he could be one of the best for fantasy that we've seen.
I want to toot Jesse's horn here a little bit. He, back when I wasn't writing for fantasy or had fantasy guides, we would just talk on the phone. That was my, the Instagram post I put out, Andrew. That was just me talking to Jesse on the phone for a while there. And I remember when Mark Andrews was very young in college, I remember him we were talking dynasty stuff. And he's like, there's this guy at Oklahoma. He's the next Travis Kelce. And he was talking about Mark Andrews. And that was years before he came into the NFL. And to some extent, Mark Andrews has lived up to the Kelce type height. A couple of years ago, when Kyle Pitts was a rookie, Jesse's telling me Brock Bowers is better than Kyle Pitts. I remember him. We even posted about it at some point saying Jesse said he was better than Kyle Pitts. And I just remember ripping on Jesse like, oh, come on, this is ridiculous. And he's like, dude, the guy's better. And this is would he have been a freshman, Jesse, or a sophomore or something?
Like I said, 18-year-old kid, the best player on a national championship team when you're 18 for the Georgia Bulldogs. And I believe they had like 17 players from their defense drafted in the first round somehow.
Oh,
you know what I mean? Like, but he was the man. He was the man that young.
You also told me about Trey McBride before I'd ever heard about him, about how good you're like, he goes to Fort Morgan, which is a town here in Colorado. He grew up there.
Born in the same town. Yep. That's where.
Yeah. And he was just talking about Trey McBride, about how good he was. And so Jesse might not know anything, but he freaking knows tight ends. Okay. Every time he tells me about a guy that I've never heard of that are in college, these guys seem to hit. And we're talking about like top 5 tight ends right now. So,
well, the funny part
you're making me want to draft Brock Bowers pretty high in a dynasty startup.
The funny part about tight end is it's not if you're a wide receiver coach like me, like that's what I do is wide receiver stuff. You want the guys that are just big wide receivers and run routes like wide receivers. And that's what I remember. You talk about the Mark Andrews thing. He was lining up in a 2-point stance before that was cool, and I was just like, well, in dynasty, it's a lot easier to throw to the guy when he's not in a 3-point stance, having to grind on a defensive end every freaking play. He's out in the slot. Like, this guy's going to get a ton of action in the NFL. And yeah, it's just those guys that have the ability to stand up and move around. That's what we saw with Dalton Kincaid too, and it's just like, that's exciting because now they can be used all over the place. And the guy gets, how many tight ends? You guys just tell me another one. Who's the last tight end that takes jet sweeps, handoffs?
Aaron Hernandez.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
Yeah. So, but there you go. But how is he?
Evan Ingram.
He's pretty good. It's pretty good, right?
Yeah.
Aaron Hernandez, I mean, he killed people and he's a psychopath, but he was good at football.
I remember Aaron Hernandez against the Broncos. I want to say it was in the playoffs. Took a jet sweep 45 yards to the house.
So that might not be a bad comp, honestly, without the crazy stuff. You can't really comp that guy.
Could you edit that
out? No, but
just stuck with it.
But just like that guy would line up in the backfield, right? They moved him all over the place. He was a crazy athlete, and that's what Brock Bowers does.
Yeah. To your point, I went back and was like, all right, I need to figure out, like, I don't have experience, so I'm going to go back and watch old guy film. And I watched tight ends, and I'm like, all right, the good tight ends, let's see these guys. And basically the consensus is, if you watch a play and you go, oh crap, that's a tight end, that means he's really good.
Yep.
That's what you're looking for.
Yep. But that's the exact. Yep. Exactly.
I'm going to start playing some name game here to get us on Brock Bowers, like where we want him trade value wise, dynasty startup wise, and almost redraft value. But I'm going to go through the list. Start at the top. Sam Laporta. Would you rather have Brock Bowers or Sam Laporta?
Laporta.
I think it's Laporta for now, but
don't smirk. It's Laporta.
Well, I like Laporta. I do like him. I don't know.
What if Bowers goes to the Jets? He goes to the Jets.
He has 1 year with Aaron Rodgers.
I don't want to
put him
just be locked into, like, Bowers could be generational talent. So I get it. I don't think Sam Laporta will ever be a generational tight end.
So you would take Bowers over Sam Laporta?
That's where I'm stuck there. I
tight end 1.
Who would you take over
I think
Brock
it's possible,
Bowers?
guys. I mean, I just think he's that
I think
good.
he's tier 1.
Andrew, what I'm saying is
already,
the more I buy into him, the more he might be my tight end 1 in Dynasty.
So Brock Bowers, you would take him over Trey McBride.
I think I might.
You take him over Mark Andrews.
I would.
Oh yeah,
yes.
So
he's the tight end 3 at the.
For me, it's only between Laporta or McBride. Like he's ahead of everyone else easily for me. So it's and I wouldn't fault anybody for disagreeing with me wanting to take Laporta or McBride over him. I like those guys a lot. I think I like McBride almost more than Laporta. I really like McBride a lot, but Brock Bowers, we'll see where he gets drafted, right? You know, I think Jacob, you had him at what, 12, pick 12 maybe?
He's at 11.5, and you look at the teams above, and it's not great. I mean, Chargers would be dream scenario. They're sitting at 5, but likely to trade. The Titans could, I guess, but it's likely that they take an offensive lineman. Atlanta could be the funniest thing of all time at pick 8.
The Bengals are going to make a championship move up to get Bowers. And
that would
be
awesome.
Then it's over.
Andrew, if he goes to
the Bears at 9.
If he goes to the Bears, I like that. I mean, it's tied to Caleb Williams. I'll take that.
But
if he goes to New York, if he goes to the Jets, I like it because not only could he be good right away, but that'll just help his dynasty value overall. If he goes to like the Giants, then that's where I'm probably going. You know what? I'm going Laporta. I'm going McBride.
I think the Jets help his redraft value. I don't think they help his dynasty value.
I think it'll help his dynasty a little bit.
Do you think, Steven, the Cardinals taking a wide receiver 1 hurts McBride's value at all? Like, does that bring him down?
Yeah, but I mean, he's not going to get the 14 targets a game he was getting last year.
Yeah.
You know, if Marvin Harrison's there, he's not going to get that kind of volume, but he's still going to be, I think, targeted a lot. I think he and Murray have a pretty good connection.
I'm wildly high, I guess, on Mark Andrews. I don't think I'd rather have Mark Andrews. Tight ends age well. I don't know. And Lamar Jackson is just getting unlocked, and he's already had one of the best tight end seasons fantasy wise in the last 5 years. I don't know. But that's how crazy this class is. Brock Bowers might be the best tight end prospect ever. Marvin Harrison might be the best wide receiver prospect ever. Caleb Williams probably isn't the best quarterback prospect ever, but he's up there, like undeniably. So we are absolutely blessed with an unbelievable class this year. Be excited wherever you're drafting. Any final shots or passing thoughts before we close out here, gentlemen?
It's just sad that those running backs didn't hold up their end of the bargain.
Yeah, they really dropped the ball. Although we were blessed last year.
Yeah.
Last year was a good one.
Yeah.
It overcompensated. Absolutely. Well, that'll do it for tonight. At least next week, we are in full-fledged draft week. We will have one more ep out before the draft. So it'll be right before. We'll get the reactions after the draft. We'll have plenty of posts going out before, maybe during Disney World allowing for Steven. And
I think Jacob's going to come to the rescue.
I'm going to help with posts.
Jacob's going to
get stuff out.
He's going to pull over. He's going to have the Superman jersey on underneath, and
bless you, Jacob. So we will have content rolling out for you guys everywhere. Follow the page at Fantasy Guides. You can follow Jesse specifically at Debbie Rookie Watch. You can follow Jacob at FG Rhodes FF. Wait, did I get this right this time?
You got it right.
Yeah, at FG Rhodes FF. You can follow me at Toysher FG. Give us a follow, like, subscribe, do whatever the cool kids are doing on wherever you're listening to. Give us the love we so deserve. Gentlemen, before we sign off, say goodbye to the friends at home.
Bye, friends at home.
Bye, friends at home.